I'll let you know.
Okay, this summer, we're gonna have a project going on in the village. We're gonna relay sewer and water main on 5 different streets. The streets are gonna be North Street,
Yeah, keep
Elevator Lane,
Valerie can start over again.
Park Street, Commerce Street. That's gonna be sewer and water.
Yeah.
Liberty Street, North Liberty Street is just gonna be water main. So tonight we have Matt Gurley and Kevin Bond from McMahon Associates. They are our engineering firm, and they have everything in outline here, what's gonna be talked about tonight. So Matt, Kevin, all yours.
I hear you can take your mask off if you're presenting. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah. Okay. Like Dan said, we're the engineering firm for the village. Our company is McMahon Associates. We've been the village engineers for, many years. I've been at McMahon for 35 years, and we started working for the village well before that. So we're familiar with the village and especially the infrastructure within the village, and particularly the sewer and water and the various development projects that have happened throughout the years. So everybody has one of these handouts. Mine is all highlighted because those were all distributed. Okay, so we're going to follow that handout tonight and kind of go through things to hit the highlights, and somewhere along the way we'll probably take questions and so forth. So Dan had talked about the project limits, and there's a couple different maps located up here, and Pastor has another exhibit on the wall or on the screen. As Dan had indicated, the various streets on this map here. The diagram showing areas, green areas, and green areas for sanitary sewer. I believe maps in the back of the handout as well.
Yes, the back of the handout.
Yeah.
That
same map. Okay,
So if you're in
those areas of the project,
then you're gonna have a little
disruption, over the next couple of years. This initial project is going to be for the sewer and water, and then next year will be the street project and storm sewer. So as we go through tonight's presentation, I think the primary objective is to get to the point of talking about private sewer laterals. Okay, we are going to describe what the project is in a certain amount of detail, and tell you why the project is being done. And a lot of what we're talking about is going to focus on the sanitary sewer part of the project. That doesn't mean that the water main isn't important, or that the future road project or the storm sewer and the drainage isn't important. But tonight is really focusing on the sanitary sewer part, and particularly getting to the private laterals. And that's something I think that's going to be the most of interest, and it's the primary reason we're having this informational meeting. So as shown on this outline, there's areas that in the village that this is aging infrastructure, right? The sewers have been in the ground for 50, 60 years. Same with the water, and they get old and brittle, and in the sewer situation becomes where they're leaky. And when they're leaking, they're taking on infiltration, they're taking on clear water. So what happens is that creates a capacity situation in the sewer collection system, and it ends up down at Paul's plant and Silver Beach Road. Paul is the wastewater treatment plant operator. It's no fun for him when there's all this clear water that goes down to the plant because it, you know, in certain times of the year when you got heavy rain and flooding, it's tough on the treatment plant. And so basically what we're trying to do with this sewer project is to reconstruct the sewers so that it tightens up the system and that doesn't allow that infiltration or the clear water to enter the system, and minimize that so that when Paul's operating the plant, he's dealing with wastewater, not all the clear water. So there's a couple images here what pipes look like in the ground, you know, that when they get old and brittle, and you can see roots are coming in, intruding into the sewer lines, and that allows for the clear water to come in. So I'm going to flip to the second page of our outline and just talk about the project from the standpoint of what its components are. And there's really three components to the project in this, and I'm just talking about sewer now. Okay, so there's the mainline sewer. The mainline sewer runs in the road. And there's this exhibit here, and this is on that second page of the outline as well. So, hey, you're tall. You want to point to the mainline sewer and then the lateral and whatnot as we're going? Yeah. So this exhibit, Kevin's pointing to the mainline sewer. So that's, as you can see, this is kind of a cutout, you know, so that's out usually in the road, right? That's the mainline sewer. That's the village-owned sanitary sewer. That sewer branches off and serves the home. And that sewer goes all the way from the mainline sewer all the way into the house, right? Usually underneath your basement footing and then, you know, through your drains. Now, partway through is the right-of-way line, right? So the property line is the part where the lateral from the main crosses the village right-of-way onto your property, onto your private property, and then into your house. So the three parts of the sewer collection system that you need to know is the mainline sewer, the public lateral, which is the first part connected to the sewer, and then the private lateral, okay? So the village is responsible, thanks Kevin, the village is responsible for replacing the mainline sewer and the public part of the lateral. Homeowners are responsible for maintaining the private part of the lateral, okay? And when sewer lines get old and you know there's leaks that we talked about with the infiltration, you know, they need to be upgraded. So there is a system that the village has gone through in the past where when the village does a sewer replacement project, they will offer to replace the laterals, the private laterals on private property, okay? So what you need to know about the private lateral is if it's your lateral, right? It's the private property lateral. If your lateral is leaking, it's defective in some way, if it's made of old materials or whatever, it's going to have to be replaced. I would say in the age of where we're doing this project, the majority, I'm looking at Dan.
Majority of them are gonna be clay tile, which are probably gonna be defective.
Right, right.
If you look at the pictures that Matt shows, that's the sewer on North Street. We just televised that last fall, so that's just not a picture taken out of a different magazine.
Yeah. So we would, you know, expect that the majority of all of the homes that are served by the sewers in this area on the map, those of you that got invited to this meeting are lucky enough that you're going to be part of this project, right? And we would presume that your laterals are likely defective and need to be replaced. Okay, so that pretty much covers page 2. Now, when we start talking about options for replacing the laterals, certainly each property owner can hire their own contractor to replace their private lateral, run it from their house, basement out to the stub at the right-of-way line. You're certainly welcome to do that. You're welcome to hire your own contractor to do that if you choose, and that's what we call option A, okay, on the handout here. And if you do that, you'll have like 60 days after the project is ready for you to connect, you know, to have your plumber do that work. And that would be obviously, you know, paid for by the private property owner, just like fixing your roof or, you know, putting on new siding or remodeling your living room or whatever. Your sewer lateral is part of something that sometimes needs to get renovated. It's not the sexiest renovation project you're going to go through for sure. But the other option, and this is very popular when communities like the Village of Belgium offer this to their customers, is that you would be able to have your private lateral replaced by the village contractor. So when the village hires a contractor, they put it out for bid, and the main line sewer lines, you know, and the water lines and so forth are going to be replaced by a village contractor, right? Those contractors are also capable of providing the lateral replacement on the private property, okay? And we've kind of had this program, we did this back in, when was the last time, in Main Street? 2012 on Main Street. And we went through and we did all the sewer and water replacement, stubbed out all the laterals to the lot line. But we also had the laterals constructed, the defective laterals were replaced all the way to the house. And that went pretty well, right? So, and there's a couple different techniques that contractors would use to relay those private laterals. They could be trenched, you know, from the street out to the home, and, you know, reconnected, or sometimes, and oftentimes it'll use a technique called pipe bursting, which is trenchless, and it just follows the old pipe and puts a new pipe in its place. So I guess more on the process. So if you select this option B, in other words, the village option, the work would be performed by the village contractor. The first thing that would happen is that there'd be a site meeting at your home. You know, there would be a scheduled time when representatives from the village, from the contractor, from McMahon, are on behalf of the project and the village, would visit each of the residences or businesses to see what is the physical situation at each of these locations, and what would be the plan and the footage, and what is the estimate for the work to be done on the private property. And the contractor, we have you know, bid items that the contractors put together, or that we put together for the contractors to have pricing, you know, unit prices for certain things, so much a foot for 4-inch pipe, and so much for a clean out, and so much for a bend, and whatever. You know, there's a menu of items that we would have at our disposal, and look at your situation, come up with an estimate, put it on paper for you. And if you can review it and then say yes or no, I wanna go with the village contractor, or no, thanks, I'm gonna hire my own person. Well, the other part of this is, you know, it comes, you know, everybody always wants to know how much is it gonna be, and it's depends, right? The answer is, how much is it gonna be? It depends on how much footage you have and how many different intricacies there are in your particular project. But we have a range, and it's on this document that's $2,000 to $5,000. I know that's a big range, but you know, generally speaking, you know, everything falls within that range unless you have a unique situation. But you know up front what the cost would be before the work is done. Am I missing anything yet?
No, I think you're covering it by line.
Okay. One of the things that I guess it's on the bottom of page 3, I think it's always best if the private property restoration is handled by the property owner. We only want to deal with sewer line replacement on the private property. We don't want to be in as part of the village is hiring a sewer contractor. They're not hiring a landscaper and, you know, somebody to do all the nitty gritty, you know, details on replacing landscaping or a plant or, you know, a sidewalk or whatever, a private portion of a sidewalk. So that's best to the homeowner. We only want to charge you the amount that's related to the sewer work that on your, you know, to rehab that sewer line. So just a little nuance to that. And then I'm going to flip to the last page of this handout and just rattle through the last couple of things here. And really, if you pick the option where the village, option B, where you would hire the village contractor, you know, there's about 5 bullet points on what the process would be. You know, first there'd be a site visit like I talked about. You know, we'd have to have access to your basement and check things out, and then an estimate would be provided, and then the owner, you as owners, would approve the estimate. If you want to go forward with the village contractor, there's a signature requirement for that. Then obviously then at some point the work gets completed, and then you decide on what payment method that you get. And there's 3 choices that we have listed. I might need some help from the village on the payment options, but paying in full is always, that's probably, you would probably have guessed that have been an option, right? You just pay for it all right at once, you know. Prior to November 1st would not include any interest payment. You could also have it put on your taxes, right? And if you did that and paid the full amount on your tax bill the first year, you wouldn't get charged any interest, correct? Okay.
So you'd be paying that into 2022, right? Because the second payment is due the middle of the year?
No, this would have to be paid by January 31st of 2022.
Okay,
That portion would have to be paid first. So in order to not incur interest.
okay.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
I know it's back to the lateral. What year would you estimate if a house was built that it had the PVC pipes?
Oh, probably in the mid 70s, I would say. If the house was built in the, I don't know, that's what I'm thinking,
I would
mid
think
70s.
in that neighborhood.
PVC pipe came in the early to mid 70s. Yep.
I have a question, piggybacking on that. If it's built with anything other than PVC, no matter the condition, is it gonna have to be replaced? Just automatically, if it's clay, it has to be replaced? Or no?
Well, if it's clay, it's likely, I mean, it's very rare. I have never seen one in my career that doesn't leak, you know. So if it's clay, so there could be a situation where, boy, I don't know, you know, luck of the draw that, you know, everything is just perfect, right? And that pipe is in good
So it's
condition,
not
it
like
doesn't leak.
Legally, it could be clay, but Probably.
chances are if it's clay, it's gonna be defective. Yeah.
Okay.
So that, and then the third payment option is something that the village would allow for paying the cost back over a 5-year period on your tax bill. And then that would incur interest. But I think this is something that allowing, you know, the 5-year payback is really a nice feature that, you know, the village is doing. And the reason that the village is offering to do this work and to offer some flexibility in the repayment schedule and that kind of thing is that it's good for the village to get rid of this I&I as well, right? And if they have one contractor basically working through and making all these lateral replacements, you know, there's some consistency with that and that there's confidence that it's being done, you know, right. So that's basically how that would work. There's a couple other nuances. One is regarding sump pumps, and a lot of times what happens is that if you have leaky sewer laterals, sometimes those leaky pipes, like I said, they take in the groundwater and that groundwater goes downstream into the sewer and ends up at Paul's plant, right? Well, that's kind of like dewatering your basement. Sometimes people that have leaky sewer laterals don't notice their sump pumps running, or maybe they don't even have a sump pump, right? So when this sewer collection system and the sanitary sewer pipes get replaced, it tightens that up, that the system is tightened up so that it's not taking on that clear water anymore. So you may notice, if you have that situation, you may notice that all of a sudden I'm noticing water in my sump crock, or I have water in my basement that I didn't have before. Go ahead.
With this whole restoration program, Danny, you're gonna know immediately what I'm gonna probably ask you.
I know what the words are coming out of your mouth.
Right. Well, it goes on almost every spring. I mean, I might as well buy donuts and have you come over for breakfast to pump the sewer water out of my basement. Is this gonna stop? Wherever that water is supposed to go from Elm Street, is it gonna, the pond, wherever the pond is? Because you always tell me, well, Ken, the pond is full, there's no place to go with the water. Well, I don't want it in my basement any more than anybody, he wants it in his sewer water either. Is this project gonna resolve that issue? Because if this project goes on and it doesn't resolve that issue, we need to adjust the scope of the project to resolve that issue.
Like Matt had said earlier in the meeting tonight, that would be the sport part.
Right?
So
That's
yeah,
next
you know,
year.
That's next year, so.
So if I've got my lateral all ripped apart and it decides to flood, and what's gonna happen with all the storm? Because I understand, I guess my point is, we got this backwards. Should we be doing the stormwater first, at least on Elm Street, and then do the others secondary? Because if you're in the middle of this big project, and then you know there's 8 inches of water on the street. What are we gonna do if the street's all ripped up and everybody's lateral's exposed, or some people's, one person's lateral is exposed?
So where's his water coming in when he?
Well, that's when it all floods, you know, comes from, when the drainage gets it full, it backs up. Most of that water is coming from North Street, you know, Elevator Lane. It all comes down and by the camp.
Okay, I may not be the only person with the issue, and I'm certainly not suggesting that, but
from my yard.
you get my
Yeah.
point, you know?
We have it in our basement already.
I had 18 in my water, in my basement.
Yeah,
If we're halfway into a sanitation, water condition project, and it decides it's gonna rain really hard, I mean, we're just begging for problems here. I mean, do we have the cart ahead of the horse on this?
well, so there's the process of splitting the project was a decision that had been made, you know, for budgeting reasons, basically, you know, to do the entire project you know, including sewer, water main, storm sewer, and the road, okay? You know, which hopefully will solve, you know, the drainage problem, you know, associated with that low-lying area. You know, the village is faced with the budgeting timing, you know, that they need to split the project into 2 phases. And doing the underground part of the project, the sewer and the water first, you know, is the plan, you know, that had been selected. And the, you know, the second phase being the stormwater and the road work restoration, you know. So there's pros and cons to, you know, doing the project all in one motion versus, you know, doing it in phases, you know,
One other thing is, I mean, if we get the clear water out of the sewer system, I mean, it's not getting in, it's not backing up through these ford drains. I mean, that's what's happening, our plant is getting overloaded with the water, and it comes up through the ford drains, through the manholes out the road.
Well, no, but we've been in our house for 30 years now. And we would have maybe a major flood every 5 years. Well, the last 5 years, we've been having a major flood. And we're told it's because whatever storm they were on needs to be cleared out, blah, blah, blah. So they charged us money to do that. And lo and behold, we still had a flood within the next couple of months.
Yeah,
It's not coming up from our
Regardless.
floor drains, it's coming in from our backyard.
and that's coming from all the water that comes from North Street, Elevator Lane, that
So-
open field, so.
mhm,
Not to throw a monkey wrench in the deal, but
Right.
if we have to segregate the project, do we have to segregate the project as to the amount of work that gets done on each street? Can't we do the street at a time to segregate the project?
mhm.
And again, it kind of sucks to have to, you know, throw away a freezer and it's full of food and it's I mean, that's a big expense. Nobody wants to cover that. And if we're gonna do this, your words were, we hope it's gonna solve the problem. Well, that's, a hope is like, you know, you can hope in one hand and pee in the other, it still feels the same, it's wet and sticky. I want more confidence that this is gonna solve the problem. If we're gonna spend the money, let's solve the problem.
So you're talking about a drainage problem, right?
Correct.
Okay, and the drainage part of the project hasn't even begun to be designed yet. So we're putting together the sewer and water part of the project right now. So until we see what the details are of your drainage problem, identify that problem, you know, we, you know, need to get a strategy to solve that problem with the drainage part of the project, which we haven't even begun to design yet. So when I say I hope, I only say that because I don't know what your problem is, you know, to be able to put a solution together for it.
Like Dan said, my drainage problem is the window in my basement because the
Mhm.
drainage problem really is on a different road that ends up having nowhere to go and ends up in my backyard and in my windows.
On the map where it says potential stormwater areas,
Mhm.
if there are, those reservoirs or those pond areas put in, I'm thinking if there's all this extra water, that's the purpose of those,
Right,
right?
right.
So those are not designed yet and not necessarily gonna go in all those blue circles and that has to be determined, right?
Right, the concept is for, there to be stormwater retention areas, to be, and generally 3 areas that are shown on that map and concept. And that has to be refined, you know, and storm sewers designed to a certain elevation to, you know, drain things where they need to go.
There's the problem with that. On North Street behind the field, halfway through, there's a drain system there already put in place, but you guys don't have that in the working system. Why? It's already there. We know it needs to be reworked. We're having flooding issues because of that too. And that goes to elevator lane. And that floods his house. That floods his house. So what are you gonna do about that? That's not even in the plans here.
The network that will be designed encapsulates that whole area. Like he said, it's not been designed yet, but the flood studies and stormwater studies,
But it's like
Extend out.
considered.
yes, it extends out to all the adjacent properties, especially that field area, that property that is for future development, that is all taken into consideration when we design the stormwater.
Right,
Yeah, that's the big problem.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about right there. There's nothing there.
We get a lot of,
So that, all this water right here
sure.
comes right down here.
right down the,
And the way I have my house landscaped is to force it all onto the
that's where it
street.
all comes, it comes
That
right
floods
down
everything right here.
So this is turning into a drainage meeting, okay, which is fine. Right. So what we know from talking to the village, from your DPW and your water, wastewater operator, and I see Pat back there, talk to the village staff about, you know, the different problems. And so there is a concept for having a drainage easement along the rear of all those, the north side of the lots on North Street, okay? And, okay, so here's how some of the timing of the drainage part of the project is probably gonna require land acquisition or easements, you know, to be able to accommodate the different drainage features that need to be done. Whereas the sewer and the water part of the project can be done inside of the road right away. You know, so we can do the sewer and water part of the project this year and get that, you know, out of the way. The sewer is the deepest, the water is the next deepest. The storm sewer is usually a little shallower than the water main, okay? So the sequence is to put in the deepest utility first and then, you know, progress. Would I like to do, you know, this whole project all at once? Yeah, I would. But the way it's has to be phased is those are the cards we're faced with. So, but that's good input, you know, like I said, it's turning into more of a drainage meeting.
What's the cost effectiveness on the first stage? What is the first stage gonna cost the city?
What is the overall estimated cost for the sewer and water?
Stage.
Yeah, yeah, it's just south of 2 million, basically. Yep.
When the engineering does go through, is Dan part of that?
Yep.
Because he knows
Mhm.
all of our.
Yep,
complaints
yep,
already.
yep.
What we were talking even about putting a swale on the backside of them houses on North Street so the water won't catch up.
Right.
Get it at the elevator lane before it gets to your point, and we talked about that. Paul and I, we went up by McMahon probably 2-3 times already working on this, and I said, one thing we gotta watch out for, I said, try to get that water off of North Street this year already, and we thought of putting a swale on the back there. So
A
we'll
what?
get that far.
oh, what,
Ditch,
Danny?
swale,
A swale,
swale is a
okay.
shallow ditch.
Oh. Don't run it on my property, please.
See, that's this easement thing.
I'm on the corner,
right?
I'm on the corner of elevator lane and North Street, so I know what.
And
I know
and when we say that we haven't started the design with it, it doesn't mean that we haven't been looking into it and
Well,
doing
right.
our research. Last year, when you guys had the large rain event, I actually came down here and met with Dan, and we drove through the town and we established the areas of concern. We came out and shot different elevations to get a kind of an idea of what things we're doing for this project area is. So we've been looking into it. We've been devising a plan and going through different concepts and options, of what's going to fit best in this area. To say that we haven't done the engineering on it yet is a kind of a term that we're using there. I mean, we're doing research on it. We're looking into it. We're taking into consideration, and obviously hearing your voices is a big part in it. But And we're compiling all this information so we can go forth with it for next year's design.
You could even put a drain right in my yard, because that would catch 90% of the water that comes off North Street. It's like a sink, and it's a 4-foot wide river that goes right to one spot. And I have a planter box that forces it all into the street right now. That's 60 feet long.
Mhm.
I have to have, and I got a motor on my house that's 46 inches deep, and it's connected to the sewer.
Right.
Doesn't reach their house.
Back to the laterals.
Yeah.
The clean ones are what, like 6 inch? The old ones?
That's what we've seen on the other streets.
And what do you guys push in then? 5 inch or 4 inch?
4 inch. Yeah, it could vary to some degree. Some might get 6 inch, you know, but depends on what you have in the actual, once you get into the basement, you know. If it's 4 inch in your basement, then we'd use 4 inch all the way. If it's 6 inch, there's different schools of thought. You know, all residential houses can be served with a 4 inch. There's a little bit of an issue with downsizing from a 6 to a 4, okay, for plumbing code reasons, but from a practical standpoint, it's 4 inches, plenty big for any residence.
This week, Wednesday, we're gonna be start televising the sewer mains and the laterals on these streets, so. By the end of maybe next week or the week after, we'll have everyone shot. See your sewer lateral and everything.
Well, when's the project, I mean, gonna start breaking ground in places, and what's the timeframe? Are you looking at be started by a date and done by fall, or I mean, what the phase you're gonna do first?
Yeah. So the plan is for the sewer and water part of the project to be bid in early to mid-April, late March, early April, I guess. And so the earliest contractor would likely start would be the soonest would be probably sometime in May. But depends on, you know, who would get the project when they start. We don't care so much about when they start, we care when they finish. You know, we'll have a completion date of probably September 30th or something like that.
Well, when you start one street, you're gonna keep going. You're not gonna start here, start in Elm, start in Park.
Again, it's contractor dependent, you know, and so some contractors might have one crew and they just methodically go through town. Other contractors might have 2 crews, you know, and they might, you know, attack it a little differently. So yeah, it's.
Where the owner does not have any sidewalk, the right of way ends at the curb for the village?
Right away usually ends at the back of the sidewalk. The sidewalk is,
Okay, we have no sidewalk.
oh, I'm sorry, where you don't have sidewalk.
We're at the Legion.
Okay.
And we had a plumbing change last year. We ran a new lateral down, but we have a insulated lateral coming down. We're probably within what, 4 feet of the curb? So that's all we have to have tied in. Do you guys, does the contractor put an insulated layer on his connection down through the road?
Well, I guess, is it insulated because it's shallow or?
It's not real deep. It's not down 4 feet because there was no basement in this building. And so it's relatively shallow.
So are you saying it's wrapped in insulation or there's rigid insulation over the top of the?
Insulated pipe.
Oh,
The pipe is all insulated all the way around.
Junior put that in.
That's a good question. We have no sidewalk on our street.
Well, usually the right of way, just figuring in mind, like 12 to 13 feet behind the curbing is, it depends upon the road right away. So that's almost a good road. I'm figuring 10, 11 feet, 12 feet.
so yeah.
To answer your question, with your lateral, typically the contractor will run the lateral to the right of way at a typical elevation that we choose, typically around 9 to 10 feet deep. And when you get to the right of way, that's where they would put a riser and that would meet up with your lateral. We established that your lateral is too shallow. They will put insulation over the top of it, but for the public part of it, we do run the laterals in deep and then come up to meet yours. So in the event when they do come up to shallow areas, they will insulate for the concern of freezing.
So be in touch with the contractor, whoever. I think
Yeah, I
just
would-
go with the-
Yeah, would, right, that would be as a part of the meeting, you know, to establish your estimate and whatever. Yep.
Do you envision that most of this lateral work is by open trench? Because you were talking about landscaping and stuff like that.
So it depends on the individual situation with the private laterals, but I would say in the past, we've had like 75% of
I would
them
even
were,
say it's probably 95% that was pipe first or pulled through, and there was only on Main Street, there was 101 laterals. I think if we had 5 people
Open
that
cut.
open trench,
Yeah.
so it's very, very, very rare.
And you're pushing a rigid PVC pipe in through the old lateral?
it's not totally rigid, it's HDPE pipe, I think.
Yep, it's a 4-inch
And
HDPE
It's,
pipe.
so it's pulled in.
It's
at the-
flexible.
Yeah, yeah,
It's pulled
Yeah.
in with an oversized
it's-
mandrel that will explode your existing pipe, and this will fit in the place of where that one was.
Okay.
It's flexible in the sense that it can bend down into the trench, so they can pull it into your house with minimal amount of excavating. They sometimes decide to come from the road, sometimes they decide to come from the house, whatever is most practical for them.
so there has to be a hole either in the basement, inside the basement, or on the exterior outside of the basement, and then a hole out by the road, you know, basically, and pipe burst in between.
Okay. Okay.
What's the life expectancy of the pipe? Like, how long is that pipe gonna last in the ground?
Yeah, PVC is,
50 years?
it's 50 to 75 years is the life expectancy of a HDPE pipe or PVC pipe.
Now, what's the guarantee on the work? Let's say 3 years down the road, we're having issues with the wastewater going to the street. And
Well, things, you know,
becomes a-
things happen, the
Because the pipe's a little bit smaller diameter.
well, so pipe diameter isn't gonna cause any flow issues as far as constraints, if that's your concern. But if there's and you mentioned a warranty, I mean, there's a 1-year warranty period for, you know, this is the traditionally a standard agreement or contract between the village and the contractor has a 1-year correction period.
Does that extend to the homeowners then too?
If
For the private-
done by the village contractor, that's part of their warranty period now. And from time to time, there's, you know, come up across something that might pull apart or whatever, just like anything else. Question, yes?
Are we going to be able to get in and out of our residences? I have no back alley that I could go out of, and I have someone in my family that needs to go to work. How are we going to work with that?
Yep, so it generally isn't a problem until we get to the road construction part of the project. And there we'll have more meetings as far as how, you know, the road project will be sequenced and, but generally speaking, you know, there'll be people on the project that are in charge of communication with property owners to let people know if, you know, if you're gonna be blocked off for a period of time, you know, we would generally have the contractor advise the property owners, you know, if you need to get your car out of the driveway before we come across with, you know, excavating, you know, in front of your area or what have you. So the kind of communication is hand to mouth.
So are you going to arrange for parking spots for those of us that need to get out?
I'm gonna flip that to Dan. What do you?
Yeah, we'll make accommodations. I mean, when we did Main Street project, I mean, we made accommodations for everybody. We made sure they got in and out, you know, at nighttime. If they took their approach out, they put a gravel approach in, so everything was accessible.
So you're gonna have times, you know, it's inconvenient, there's nothing fun about living through construction, but generally you'll be able to get in and out.
Well, the road is what, 3 years down the road?
Next year.
Next year?
So, if my understanding is right, there's 2 phases. So does that mean the road is gonna get torn up twice? Or is,
So the sewer and water, in generally, I don't know, probably will, a lot of it will go in the road. Okay, so there'll be a trench, open cut, and some of it will be off behind the road, right? And so, yeah, there'll be trenches that'll be opened up in the road, backfilled back, and there'll be a temporary asphalt patch. You know, once the sewer lines are all put in place, it'll be restored with asphalt patch. Nothing fancy, you know, right? Just to get us through to the next year when we do the storm sewer in the street.
it's gonna be just like Main Street was, right?
Correct.
It's just gonna be exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
3 feet on the side of the road-ish, and then it'll be backfilled with gravel. We'll drive on 3 feet of gravel in the main section of the road. There'll be asphalt, so you redo the whole road.
We made it to Main Street.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes,
Yeah, it'll be
The asphalt
fully
patching,
blacktop.
It's done once the utilities run, right?
correct.
So you will have asphalt through the winter. The
Yeah.
gravel areas will be covered with asphalt.
Yeah.
Between the 2 phases.
They're gonna put bike lanes and sidewalks. You know, nobody uses the sidewalks anyways. You might as well bike lane.
No, the sidewalks weren't figuring no sidewalks on the end of the.
So, just to clarify, so private lateral
Elm Street.
is gonna start on my side of my sidewalk, right? That's where my private lateral starts, my side of my sidewalk.
So if you have sidewalk in front of your house,
Yeah.
okay, village sidewalk, generally, the back of the walk away from the street usually is about where the lot line starts. So from there, yeah, to your house.
So the sidewalks, won't be disturbed, would they?
Well, so it depends on if contractors do pipe bursting or not, you know,
So
the,
perhaps the sidewalk would, I'd lose a square and then have to pay for that separate then?
so if it's a village sidewalk, if it's a public sidewalk, that would be that would be restored by the village, on the village's equation, side of the equation, not on the private. If you have private sidewalk or, you know, walkway going up to your house or walkway, I don't know, off of your driveway or whatever, and that gets disturbed, that, as a part of the sewer lateral, that would be your responsibility.
And a project like that, do they ever have to, like bust up into my basement floor or anything?
Yeah, so generally, there would be one hole cut open in the basement floor, you know, where your sewer lateral goes out to the road. And they range in size, I don't know, 3 by 2
I think
or
they were,
whatever.
Main Street, I think we did a 3 by 3 holes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And in that hole, they'll make the connection to your existing pipe,
right.
check valves.
Yeah, you would, yeah, you guys want to check out, that's up to.
That would be
the
where
owners.
the check valve would be installed and then the concrete would be replaced.
Part of my problem is as my sewer comes out of my place of business, 1 foot is mine and then the next portion of it is under somebody else's property, not mine.
Your sewer lateral's trespassing on somebody else's.
Yeah, we'll give you permission for that.
Make that guy pay.
It was all one property at one time and then it was split off and
Oh, I
sold to
see.
somebody else and the sewer goes underneath somebody else's. property.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe you need to have an easement from the other party, you know, for your sewer lines.
What do you think?
Yeah, you guys can work that out?
I'm sure we can work something out. I just doesn't, I don't want it to cost me anything.
Yeah, right.
Are there gonna be any connections for the water line in this phase of the project?
So generally, the water laterals will be replaced from the water main out in the road to the lot line, and they just be reconnected to your existing lateral. That's what we're planning on, right?
Correct. Those laterals are generally what?
All of our
PVC or
laterals are copper.
Copper.
Copper?
You don't have any lead
We have
services?
no lead, no
Yeah.
galvanized pipe in the ground.
Mhm.
And that copper is not rotting after 50 years?
Basically, the stuff we pulled, did, on Main Street, that looked pretty good shape.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about the potentially incurring some expense for the lateral, the sewer laterals.
Mhm.
Is there any anticipated expenses for the next year's phase?
Typically not, I mean, it's a village board question, but the other subdivisions we did, the village put their own in, the curb, gutter, asphalt was all done, on the village's half.
Okay. And all this stormwater pond, they do that too? Okay.
Well, the storm, when we do the project, the following year, we're gonna include storm laterals, we're only gonna run them to the property line, so then it's up to the homeowners if they wanna hook their sump pump in there, and they gotta do that on themselves.
So there would be an expense to run the private storm lateral, which would be advisable, so that stormwater goes to the right spot, So everybody would be provided with a storm lateral from the main to the right-of-way line, and then hooked up privately, Okay, any other questions?
We got one right here, man.
Oh.
I see you're going down elevator lane, and that's not even a road that we were told.
It's not much of a road, is it? No, yeah. Okay.
That's another question. According, for elevator lane, according to our last survey, when we built our house on the corner, part of our property actually has an elevator lane. And then,
We found that out when.
Yeah, we were just talking about that last week,
so-
yeah.
yeah,
So that's another, part of the issue with the road project and the drainage project. Like I said earlier, there's property issues, that have to get sorted out. And so, yeah, that's,
you wanna buy it, half of it? Part of it.
Your storm drain goes right down the middle of your basement.
well, then maybe you own the road and you have to replace the road
Yeah.
then.
It's gonna cost you more.
We can probably work
They took
something
my
out.
picture when you're ready.
Are there any thoughts about elevator lane getting improved?
Well, we're looking into that. I mean,
Okay.
It's gonna be talked about when we're designing everything and.
Make it more like a road.
Like they do all the other roads.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, in the case of when you're getting a lateral hooked up to the sewer, the weekend would never be shut off. You'd have access to a sewer system.
Yeah.
oh, yeah, right.
Each day.
Even at the end of each day, yeah, right. Yeah.
So even while they're working out front of your house through the roadway, it's not advised to use a sewer lateral, but I mean, it happens while they're working on it. The way they stage it, they are hooking it up as they go, temporary back to what you have in your, existing yard, so.
They got a guy going around with a 5-gallon bucket.
They will stage it, so they will stage it to accommodate you.
Yeah, there might be some isolated periods of time where you're asked, hey, don't use your water, don't flush your toilet, and whatever. I mean, but it's usually just a hour or so.
Yeah, you will not be left for a weekend.
Anybody want that job with With the 5-gallon bucket?
What's it pay?
Take so much off the
1-800
bill.
Porta John.
Did someone just out of curiosity, that vacant land on North Street to the north, if that ever was subdivided, where would the where would the sewer run?
The sanitary sewer?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had a time. maybe it
Yeah.
happened.
Right behind me.
So we,
Yeah. So this
Plan
is-
is-
Coming out from the elevator lane, I think.
Yeah, so there's basically a connection that would be made somewhere.
The elevator lane must be pretty deep, huh?
Yeah. So we'd have a manhole that's, this land had been proposed for development 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it just never happened. But there was going to be a road coming out, I don't know, 40 years somewhere.
One in the middle of that.
In the middle of that parcel, yeah.
Like a horseshoe.
So we'd likely put a manhole, along there somewhere, and then ultimately, whoever develops that property then would be responsible for running the sewer.
Would you have to,
connection.
couldn't you run one up to the other part there too? Because we guys, I know from, we had voted against it because there's only one entrance for that road.
This here?
No, for elevator lane off of North Street.
Oh,
There's only one entrance, and if fire trucks ever have to get through, there's no way to get out.
so elevator lane would connect.
It would have to connect to the
This
other
would-
side, yeah.
This would all be connected, elevator would someday, might.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, at least on the east end. Yeah, Okay, is anybody from the village? Dan, anybody?
Just remember, when it gets closer to going, a lot of these questions you have, informational can be answered, but we have a contract that's been bid. And then, they'll be with you individually with each owners. Actually, on at that time too as well. If you have any questions for the village board, any stuff, we have our meeting second Monday of the month at 7 o'clock. I was more than welcome to come in. Check it out. Think it's all good.
You know how many firms are gonna submit the bid?
How many what?
How many firms are just submit bids?
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, McMahon, they're getting all the plans all drawn up and then they're gonna, how they advertise it and any contractor can do it.
Yeah.
So how,
You don't have a contract yet, and you're gonna start in April.
That's why we gotta get this guy back to the office to start putting the plans
It's gonna
together.
go to bid in April.
so what was the cost of the laterals when you did Main Street?
Was there an average cost?
Yeah, it was
I would say
probably,
average cost on Main Street probably was 1,500 to 1,700.
So how much was the lateral per foot? Because Danny, you know us. we're
It was
the furthest
$16
back.
per foot then.
You're our property, we're the furthest back on Elm
It was
Street.
$16 when we did on Main Street, so
Yeah,
$60 a
it's
foot?
9 years ago, so
yeah.
maybe 25 now, 20, 25.
How long does it take to replace a lateral? They could probably do, 3, 4 of them in a day.
yeah, depending on the length, obviously, and the complexity of it.
My concern is the micro camp that I have to find into that.
Gotcha, okay.
I think we'll have to just,
Because I don't want to carry the 5 gallon.
when that time comes, Paul, we'll have to work with you guys and figure something out. I mean, usually the contractors work good with the,
And we'll be working with those.
Yeah, there might be some unique situations that have some special attention. Okay,
No, thank you guys very much.
yep, thank you very much.
thanks for coming.
I don't.